Andrew Williamson here. Welcome back to Williamson Education. Well, we're coming up on the end of our unit on idioms here. We have, of course, just scratched the surface of the common idioms in English, especially in American English. We have touched on a couple formal topics in idioms, especially common idiomatic sayings and prepositional idioms. I want today to get a bit more informal, a bit more colloquial, if you will. I want to teach you a thing or two about so-called slang idioms in American English. You might be wondering, what does he mean by slang? Slang is one of my personal favorite parts of the English language. Slang is essentially a very informal way of using the English language, especially a way of using the language in speech rather than in writing. Some people believe that slang is marked as a low-class way of speaking, but I do not look at the issue this way. As we have learned in prior lessons, the proper function of the English language is to connect people, especially people from wildly different backgrounds. When I use a particular slang phrase with another person, I am subtly communicating to that person that I consider them a close contact of mine. You would be less likely to use slang with, say, your boss or your teacher. Doing so might not convey the proper degree of respect for the hierarchy of the relationship. But with my friends and family, people whom I am close to and consider on my level, using slang is a perfect way to form a closer connection. Before we go too much further, I should say that slang idioms are especially rooted in particular national contexts. A slang idiom that works in one country is less likely to work in another. What I offer here is my own version of slang idioms in English, as they come from my necessarily limited American perspective. What are some examples of slang idioms in American English? A common one that you will hear before a person goes on to do a particular performance is break a leg. It's a bit of a counterintuitive idiom, but basically break a leg means good luck. Let's say a friend of yours is about to go on stage for their lead role in the musical. Or let's say they were about to go into a piano recital. You might tell that person to break a leg. There are a variety of theories about where this particular and peculiar idiom came from. The best explanation that I can find has to do with wanting to avoid jinxing a performer before they go on stage. Jinxing someone means causing a certain performance to go badly by saying that it will go well. In order to avoid jinxing a performance, stage actors will not tell each other that the performance will go well. Instead, they say that it will go poorly, that their friend will break a leg. Another common slang idiom that you will hear people say in American English is chill out. It's a way of telling a person to relax, to take a break, to not worry too much. Let's say that your friend is especially worried about a test that is coming up in school, and they are studying constantly for the exam. You might text them and say, hey, chill out, meaning take a break, relax, don't stress too much about the exam. A newer, even more slang variation of this phrase that you will often hear these days is chillax. It's a combination of the words chill and relax. You can see how slang changes and adapts quickly. There are new slang phrases seemingly every week, and many of them originate from young people. If that test your friend was worried about goes better than expected, then they might say the test was a piece of cake. Can you guess the meaning of this strange idiom from the context in which I've given it? A piece of cake is a test, exercise, or performance that feels very easy to the performer and that goes very well. Once again, I do not know the origin of this idiom, so I can only speculate. Of course, everyone likes a piece of cake, and everyone likes a performance that goes well. There's something easy, simple about the pleasure that comes from a piece of cake. Perhaps that's the meaning of the idiom. Again, I don't know the beginnings of this phrase, and I don't need to know in order to capture its meaning. Another idiom that you'll often hear American English speakers refer to these days is their bucket list. A bucket list is a list of the things you want to do or experience before you sadly die. So for me, going to see the Wimbledon final in 2016 was a bucket list item, something that I needed to do before I kick the bucket or die. I've had the privilege in my life of checking off so many items on my bucket list that I don't know how many more I could realistically ask for. What's on your bucket list? In business and personal contexts, another idiom you might hear a person say is take a rain check. To take a rain check means to postpone a certain event or meeting for another day. Let's say you are going to talk to a friend on the phone, but then another important meeting comes up. You might ask your friend if you can take a rain check. That would mean asking whether you can do the call that you were supposed to do today another day. Because it is rather informal, this idiom could actually be perceived as polite in certain circumstances. It suggests your close relationship with the person you are talking to and asking for a delay from. The slang idioms I have been giving so far are relatively common and widely understood idioms. There are others that get even more colloquial or informal, and that might be less widely understood. For instance, let's say you're hanging out with your friends and you would like to know whether everyone is ready to leave for the restaurant where you will have dinner. You might say, let's bounce. That would mean that you're ready to go. Or let's say that one of your friends was holding out on telling you some gossip that you wanted to hear. The person is keeping a secret that you want to know. You might say, dish, or spill the tea. That would mean that you want your friend to share the secret they have been keeping from you. As you can see, the world of idioms is wide and varied. There are so very many idioms in the English language, and these idioms are all located in what might be called a different register. Register is the degree of formality or informality in a given phrase in a language. If a certain phrase is relatively more formal, that would be a high register saying. If a phrase is relatively more colloquial or informal, that would be a low register saying. You always want to think carefully about which register phrases you are using in given contexts. Business and school settings might call for high register phrases and idioms, while casual social settings with your friends might call for lower register idioms that help you build bonds between equals. It's important, therefore, not only to know the meaning of a given idiom, you must also know the correct register of the idiom so that you can make good, on-the-spot judgments about whether a given idiom is appropriate for a given circumstance. Speaking in either too high a register or too low a register can cause you problems. Using the wrong idiom in the wrong context is kind of like wearing the wrong clothes to a party. You want to judge the occasion properly, not being either too formal or too informal. With these reflections about register, we come to the end of our unit on idioms. I hope you have learned a little bit about what idioms are, how to identify them, and how to use them. Of course, as I have said repeatedly, it will be some time before you learn the majority of the idioms in English that you will need to know. Once again, do not be afraid to ask for clarification from the people you are speaking with. There's no shame in a question, and you will learn a great deal over time. Also, don't forget to keep a log or journal of all of the idioms that you have learned over time in the course of your travels through the English-speaking world. In our next unit, we'll look at two more advanced topics in English language grammar: parallelism and comparisons. Learning these topics will take your English to the very next level. I'll see you right back here for the next installment. Spread the word.